So, from a man that had to legally prove that he was alive to a person who spent over a decade behind bars for a crime he was completely innocent of, here are weird cases of mistaken identities gone wrong. Number 8. Jeremy Lee Bass. What would you do if you suddenly started receiving condolences from family and friends supposedly because of a family member's passing, but you know for a fact that the person they thought to be dead was still alive and kicking? Well, whatever your reaction is, it's probably how Jeremy Lee Bass's wife reacted after receiving condolences for her husband's death. The thing is, Jeremy was still alive and well. In 2007, Jeremy himself received a phone call from the police informing him that he died in a four-wheeler accident. His wife even started receiving condolences at around the same time, and his death was also published in the obituaries of a local newspaper. What actually happened was basically a case of mixed-up hospital records. You see, the name of the guy who died in the accident was actually Jeremy Charles Bass, and it just so happened that he was declared dead by the same hospital where Jeremy Lee Bass was treated for meningitis just a few months earlier. Due to a mix-up in the hospital records, Jeremy Lee was declared dead. This resulted into him going through a lot of red tape just to prove that he was still alive. To make matters worse, he even received a $5,000 bill from the hospital for Jeremy Charles' treatment. Number 7. Will and William West. Before fingerprinting became the standard method of identifying people, law enforcement agencies used the Bertillon system. This system basically used measurements of several parts of a person's body to verify identities. The Bertillon system worked so well it was thought to be foolproof. Thought of, that was until it was proven not to be. It all unraveled in 1903 when an inmate called Will West arrived at prison in Leavenworth. His measurements had been taken just like any other prisoner, and it was discovered that Will had actually been incarcerated at Leavenworth before, something that Will vehemently denied. Prison officials were certain that he had, though. After all, they had his measurements on record. They even had his name and a photo of him on record, which was William West. As it turned out, though, Will and William West were very different people, but looked exactly alike. So alike, in fact, that when shown the photo, Will himself thought it was his photo. This incident forced the government to reconsider the effectiveness of the Bertillon system and the possibility of switching to fingerprinting. Number 6. Father Bernard Pagano. Early in 1979, a robber dubbed the Gentleman Bandit went on a robbing spree in Wilmington, Delaware, victimizing 5 businesses in all. Witnesses were able to provide a description of the suspect, which they all said to be very polite, hence the name, and a composite sketch was made. Because of this, a series of anonymous tips led to the arrest of Father Bernard Pagano, a 53-year-old assistant pastor at a Catholic church in Cambridge, Maryland. On February of the same year, Father Pagano was charged with 5 counts of armed robbery. Naturally, many people refused to believe that he was guilty, but 7 witnesses positively identified him as the Gentleman Bandit. His defense team, however, launched their own investigation that led them to a more likely culprit, a former Pennsylvania postal worker named Roland Klauser. The two looked very much alike, and Klauser, being the true gentleman that he was, felt so guilty over the idea of a priest taking the fall for his crimes that he staged more robberies after Pagano's arrest, hoping to convince the police they had the wrong man. Professionals have standards. In the end, Klauser came clean and confessed that he was indeed the Gentleman Bandit. All charges against Father Pagano were dismissed, and he received a formal apology for his ordeal. Number 5. Stefan Waldorf. In January of 1983, film editor Stefan Waldorf was driving a yellow Mini down a London road. When he found himself stuck in a traffic jam, 2 police officers approached him. Naturally, he had no idea why, so he turned to face the officers, at which point both of them opened fire, shooting him 5 times. Then they got out of ammo, and one officer pistol-whipped the wounded Waldorf as he crawled out of the vehicle and was then placed in handcuffs. Okay, yes, I know it looks bad, but this was no random act of police violence, though. Doesn't justify it, but still. The officers had their reasons for opening fire. Not a good reason, but still a reason at that. Apparently, they spotted a woman named Susan Steffen sneaking into Waldorf's car. She was the girlfriend of convicted cop killer David Martin, who escaped from prison on Christmas Eve the previous year. When the officers saw this, they kind of put 2 and 2 together, and they mistakenly concluded Waldorf was Martin. When Waldorf turned toward the back seat, they assumed he was going for a weapon. Of course, Waldorf had no idea that the woman was in his car in the first place. Both officers were charged with attempted murder, and though they were both acquitted at trial, Waldorf did walk away a lucky man, both alive and compensated £120,000 for his ordeal. Number 4. Ralph Alsman and John Dillinger. John Dillinger was an infamous outlaw who terrorized the U.S. Midwest during the Great Depression. He and his gang of thugs robbed, wounded, and killed at will. He also raided banks and police armories and infamously broke out of jail 3 times. Then in 1934, U.S. authorities launched a manhunt with specific orders that Dillinger should be shot to death when he was spotted. Yeah, that's all well and good, but the order became a massive problem for a certain Ralph Alsman, who unfortunately bore a striking resemblance of the notorious criminal. Both of them had moles near their eyes, cleft chins, and scars on their left wrists. Poor Alsman was actually arrested 17 times in various cities by police officers who mistook him for Dillinger. In one particularly harrowing incident, 3 machine guns were aimed directly at Alsman, and in another incident he was awakened from sleep with a gun pointed directly at him at point-blank range. Luckily though, he was never shot. Thankfully, all his problems came to an end on July 22, 1934, when 3 FBI agents shot and killed Dillinger as he left a theater. Number 3. Robert P. Casey. Cases of mistaken identity don't always end up badly for people. In the case of Robert P. Casey, his doppelgangers use his name not for nefarious reasons but to get a leg up in life. You'll see what I mean in a bit. Robert P. Casey was a top Democratic Party member and Pennsylvania politician. He served as a state senator, the state auditor general, and the governor. Needless to say, he was pretty popular. So popular, in fact, that voters elected the similarly named Robert E. Casey as state treasurer in 1976. This is because they thought he was Robert P. Casey, and furthermore, Robert E. spent a measly $1,000 for his campaign. This wasn't the only time somebody rode on the Robert P. Casey bandwagon, though. During another election, a school teacher and ice cream seller named Robert P. Casey ran on the Democratic Party's ticket for Pennsylvania lieutenant governor to the detriment of the real Robert P. Casey, who was running for governor at the same time. Number 2. Guy Coma and Guy Cooney. In 2006, Steve Jobs' Apple was involved in a legal battle with Apple Corps, a record label owned by the Beatles. Of course, it was pretty big news at the time, so many news outlets were reporting on it, including the BBC. The network invited technology writer and internet expert Guy Cooney to provide his expert opinion regarding the lawsuit on a live broadcast. However, Cooney's interview just so happened to fall on the same day as another different kind of interview. This was for a Guy Goma who was there looking for a job. I'm pretty sure you can already imagine what happened next. Staff mistook Goma for Cooney and immediately prepped him for the interview, wiring him up with a live mic. Goma, on the other hand, was clueless as to what was happening. He genuinely thought that he was being prepared for his job interview. Then the interview began, and the emotion that etched onto his face when he realized what was happening was really priceless. He managed to compose himself, though, even managing to answer some of the interviewer's questions. In the end, everyone realized their mistake, and poor Guy Goma didn't get the job in the end. Now it's time for the day's best pick. As in, the worst possible outcome that can actually happen in cases of mistaken identity. Find out more next with Richard Jones. On May 31st, 1999, a man named Richard Jones was in his home in Kansas City, Missouri, celebrating both Memorial Day and his girlfriend's birthday. At around the same time in Kansas City, Kansas, Ricky Amos and his gang had snatched a lady's phone at a Walmart store. Richard Jones and Ricky Amos looked a lot alike. They had dark eyes, thick eyebrows, and similar complexions, and although the victim and witness couldn't facially identify Ricky, they were able to provide a general description. Based on this description, police arrested the innocent Richard Jones and he was convicted and sentenced to 19 years in prison for a crime that he did not commit. 15 years into his 19-year sentence at a Kansas Department of Corrections facility, his fellow inmates made him aware of a look-alike in the same prison. It was Ricky Amos. Even now, their similarities were uncanny. Both braided their hair, sported goatees, and were nicknamed Rick. The look-alike was Ricky Amos, who was discovered to be the actual robber. It was not long after this when Richard Jones' name was cleared and he was finally set free after spending 17 years in prison for a crime he never committed, and also was awarded a nice $1.1 million settlement. Do you know of other stories of mistaken identities? Let us know in the comment section down below. Also make sure to check out the channel's other amazing videos. As always, thank you all for watching and I'll see you all next time. Later everybody!